Welcome to Season 6 of the One Inside an Internal Family Systems podcast. I'm Tammy Sallenberger, author of The One Inside 30 Days to Your Authentic Self. This podcast is for anyone curious about their inner world and who have a desire to connect to that authentic self. Welcome. I'm so glad you're here. I am super excited today to have Jodie Benveniste on. She is an IFS Level 1 trained author, psychologist who writes heart-expanding young adult contemporary romance that helps you to new levels of self-understanding and emotional healing. It's very, very exciting. So Jodie, why don't we start where we always start, which is tell everybody where you are in the world and what do you see when you look out your nearest window?
Yes, so I'm in my home office in Adelaide, Australia, and it is currently Wednesday morning, and I think you guys are still in Tuesday evening, and it is early summer here, so it's a beautiful, clear, bright, sunny day. I think the temperature is going to get to about 30 degrees Celsius, which is about 90 degrees Fahrenheit. And I've got views out one side to the Adelaide Hills, beautiful valley, and then the other side I've got views to the city. So I'm very lucky.
That sounds lovely. And I want to say it's not 90 here. I have a fire in the fireplace. It's like 15 degrees. So I don't know what that would be, but it's cold. So I am super excited to talk to you about your book. But before we do that, I want to talk about your journey because you were not a fiction writer before your book came out. So tell me a little bit about your journey and how you ended up writing this book.
So it's my debut fiction. You're right, but I think I've always been a fiction writer. In fact, that was. I feel like I had all these younger parts that knew I was meant to be one. And so when I was young, I read voraciously. I was always doing lots of different sorts of writing. When I kind of got to early teens, I started reading all the writing digest magazines, like learning about the craft of writing. And I think I was preparing for this. But what actually happened was I kept writing creatively right through university or college. But then I think what happened was once I started my career, so I studied psychology. I probably would have loved to have just studied writing, but I didn't feel like that was a very legitimate career. And so this is where it began. I think my younger parts knew the value of fiction writing, but I had other parts that couldn't see that career path as being very stable or secure or financially viable. So they took me down the psychology track, which has been a good one, an amazing one actually. And through that, I've done all sorts of things. I've been in private practice. I've been a consultant. I've worked on different training programs. I had my own business around parenting, education, and support. So a lot of speaking, and I wrote books, parenting books, and did all sorts of things. And once I found IFS, though, I think that was the catalyst for bringing me back to my fiction writing because I did do lots of different sorts of writing. I wrote nonfiction books, I did freelance writing, I did academic writing, just almost every kind of writing you could do apart from fiction. And then it was really through IFS, through doing a lot of healing, a lot of meeting with my parts, and that being an ongoing process where it's like, no, no, it's time. It's time to come back to fiction writing. This is what we were always meant to do, and we can't not do it anymore. So it's been a real healing journey, really. And then the other thing that IFS has allowed is actually it's really fostered the creative process. So that's been so interesting as well. It's been monumental.
So how has it fostered the creative process?
Our parts all have stories, don't they? And and they're kind of characters in our inner world. And we also are creating characters in in a book, in a fiction story. And so there's a nice synergy there between connecting with your parts within you that want to help the creative writing process and helping others that are worried, doubtful, scared, thinking they're not going to be good enough, this isn't going to work, just to kind of, like acknowledge and validate them, but also allow them to give you a bit of space. And then the act of actually writing feels like a process of receiving and listening. So listening to your characters in the same way that we listen to our parts, and hearing the story that they want to tell you, that your characters want to tell you, rather than my thinking parts who are super, smart, as are most of our
Right.
thinking parts, right?
Yes, the
They
brilliant.
want to, yeah, they want to come up with the ideas, and they want to kind of write the story themselves, and it's like that's actually not their job. Their job is to kind of help create that space so that we can hear the characters, we can hear our creative parts, and that's what it's felt like to me. It's been amazing.
And it sounds very different than writing nonfiction.
Yes, absolutely. And that's nonfiction to me. My experience of it has really served those parts of me that love structure. They love turning something more complex into something more understandable and straightforward. They love coming up with, oh, let's turn IFS into a self help model with 4 steps, and let's take everyone through the 4 steps. And they're really clever at that. They're great at it, and so it's much more a process of sort of strategy and planning and thinking through, whereas the creative writing is very different.
Yeah. Did you have to take did you have to take a class, or what did you do to switch from kind of this intellectual work focus, and then it sounds like you did a lot of personal work with your parts, and this fiction writing just had to come. So what
Mhm.
did you do to in that process of sort of really shifting where your energy was going from, like,
Yeah.
all this work stuff to this working in a different way with writing a story?
So I think I'd done a lot of preparation, even though I didn't realize it when I was younger. So all of that reading that I did, all of the craft of writing stuff that I consumed. But then I spent a good like 20 years not reading fiction at all, and just only reading nonfiction, only reading stuff that felt really purposeful and work related. And I had these parts that were
That's very
really
sad,
trying to,
very,
I
very sad.
know, isn't it sad?
Yes.
I know, we were on a mission. Some parts were on a mission. Um, so the first thing I did was go back to reading fiction, and I've just read and read and read. And then I came back to the craft of writing too. And then there's so much more information out there now. It's overwhelming. But I just came across the right craft book that really created this container for me to create in, that just felt really right. And so I could just sort of not worry about, everything else, and all of those people telling me that it's so hard to write a book and it takes years. And in fact, if it doesn't take years, it's not very good. And all of that kind of struggle around writing. And I just thought, I wanna honor the creative flow, my creative flow, and I wanna see where that takes me. So I really was quite discerning about what I took in, and then I just allowed the process to unfold.
And I'm guessing you had to work with your parts, because I know with writing a nonfiction book, for me, it's a constant working with your parts of, like, trying to get them to give you some space so that you can actually write the book. And
Mhm.
it sounds like that's what was happening even with the fiction book, because 'cause you're still working with your parts.
Yeah, I feel like my parts have been the most out of everything that I've done in my life, work-wise, they've been actually the most cooperative around the book writing, fiction writing, which is so interesting to me, because I feel like there's something within me, and even they kind of maybe knew that this was actually what I'm ultimately supposed to be doing. This is a contribution I can make. This is the way I'm meant to be contributing as well. Because I think that, I've always had this sense of wanting to help in some way, wanting to have an impact. And there were many parts that couldn't see how that could happen clearly through fiction, because we all hear these stories around, well, people who write fiction, you can never make much money. You can never, only 3 people are gonna read your book and all these sorts of stories. And so they just kind of went, "Oh, well, we know how to have an impact. You can be a psychologist, you can write nonfiction, you can run courses, you can do speaking gigs, you can do all this explicit teaching." And then where that kind of led us to burnout. And then I think once the fiction writing became inevitable, like, it was just like you could not ignore it anymore, my parts there's some relief amongst them where they could just go, "Oh, we're finally here. Oh my god.
Yeah.
Let's just let Jodie do this, and we're so tired, we're so exhausted, let's just let her do this and maybe see what happens." There was a bit more kind of openness to just going with it.
Right, it sounds like almost like the parts that were I don't wanna say this, but sort of like working against it, once they were relaxed, everyone was like, "Yes, okay," and then this, creative flow can just come out of you,
That's
once
right.
those parts sort of settle down.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, but it took a while to get there, let's say.
So tell us all about the story.
Yeah, so it's about 16-year-old Tilly, so she's just about to have her 16th birthday, and then what she's always dreamed of is the father she's never known turning up on his 16th birthday. And miraculously, he does, completely out of the blue. But then what happens is it unravels all of these family secrets around her mother, who she's been in a contentious relationship with, and also with her grandmother, who has just passed away recently. So Tilly's going through all this grief and loss around her because they had a very close relationship. And then at the same time, she's like, thinks she's in love with the hot rower boy from school. But really the boy next door, Zach, he's right there for her. And she's kind of going through all these feelings of like, um, wanting to open her heart, but not. And so that kind of first love as well. So she's going through it all. So there's family dramas, there's, first love, summer romance, and there's
It's got
IFS.
everything. Yeah, and there's IFS.
Yes.
So how does so IFS is plays a role in the book too. So tell us how IFS plays a role in this incredible story.
Yeah, so Tilly's going through grief and loss after, losing her grandmother, and, so she goes to IFS therapy. She sees a therapist. And
Imagine.
the I know, imagine, and the reason why I really wanted to include this in this genre, so I did do a lot of reading in this genre, um, young adult contemporary romance, and there are more and more books that do deal with mental health issues, and they seem to deal with them one of 2 ways. They either, make it, like part of a tragedy, so, this undiagnosed whatever, and it leads to, great tragedy, or, it's more just treated like a character trait. So anxiety is often treated that way. So it's like, "Oh, this character has anxiety," it gets in the way a little bit of their story. There's no mention of them having any sort of treatment or medication or like anything. It's just like that's who they are. Um, and I think it's great that there are mental health issues covered in this genre for normalizing and for um just kind of making people more aware of what might be going on for people. But I don't like the intransigence of that, where it's like, well, we can't transform, we can't heal, we can't. There's no mention of that. And I said, we need healing to be at the heart of these stories so that our teens and also adults, because half of young adult readers are adults, so that our teens and also adults who are connecting with their inner teens can go through this healing process. So that's what she does. She's dealing with all the family dramas, she's dealing with all her love issues, but she's also going to therapy. And and she's doing some healing, and so it's just seamlessly part of the story.
I love it. So speaking of heart, there's also a romance part of the story. So tell me how romance can be more heart expanding and tap into self energy. Because I have parts that are like, don't almost feel triggered by romance books. I don't know if this would be true anymore, but in the past it was like, no, I want a good
Yeah.
mystery. Yeah. Or a
Yeah,
young
yeah.
adult, all the, like, dystopia young adult books that were really popular a couple years ago, right? I'm like, "Yeah, I'll read all
Yes.
that stuff." But, yeah,
Yeah.
so tell me about the romance genre.
Yeah, so the romance genre to me, it is the biggest selling genre on the planet, and I think there's a reason for that because
It's
we
not
actually
murder mysteries?
it's not. They're great too, but, it is the most popular, and I think it's because we actually do love to fall in love because
Mm.
that is actually a very
Do we,
heart.
Jody?
Yeah, we do. No, we do in a safe way in books, right? Books
Ah,
offer
okay. That makes sense, yes, in a
right?
safe way in a book, yes.
Books offer a really safe way for us to fall in love, and to have that heart-opening experience without actually having to deal with the day-to-day of going through that experience ourselves. And to me, anyway, Self-Energy, of course, it has all these amazing qualities, but to me, it feels heart-opening, it feels expansive. That's the energetic of it for me, and I feel like romance kinda it does tap into that. And in this story, at the heart of the story, Tilly has to learn how to open her heart up to love, which is something that her mom and her grandmother didn't do. So she's got to uncover, like, she's got to rewrite this family pattern as well, this legacy burden, really. And I think romance really can help us to do that. It's not fluffy and light. It's actually quite deep and impactful and moving, much more than we think.
Hmm. As you're saying that, my sarcastic parts are softening a little bit, and and I'm like, yeah, there is something. It feels like to me that it's almost like, not like a redo, but it's almost, is there like a future redo where it's like, what could be possible? Like, "Oh, this could be possible." Like, "Oh, I could feel this way." Or, "Oh, I could," right, I'm falling in love with the love story. Could I have that too? So there could be sort of this, future hopeful me, parts of me that could handle it that way instead of in this sarcastic way. My other parts are handling it.
Welcome all parts. Yeah, so I think so to me the healing process is story based and it is imaginative. So we do like part at the core of healing is a reimagining. And so that's what we do. That's what we can do with story. So, I mean, the power of story, this is what I learned. When we're reading stories, we're often identifying with one or more characters in the book. And it's something that we can feel. It can be a felt experience that we can have with them, and again, in a safer way. And as they are reimagining and as they are going through these experiences, rewriting their stories, we can do the same. Our parts can kind of be a part of that. And I feel like that, and in a way that is like it's enjoyable. Like you're caught up in a story. You're, yeah, it feels a safer and more creative way to do it.
Yeah, I love that. It reminds me of, like, when like, parts don't let you cry, and then you watch a movie, and then you start, like,
Yeah.
bawling your eyes out, and you're like, "What's happening?" It's like a safe way to express some feelings, and so, yeah, getting lost in the story, and then we really do learn from our characters, right? We learn from the characters that we're reading, like, what kind of life we wanna have or not have, or what kind of relationships we wanna have, so it makes sense that if I'm reading about someone who's going through a healing journey, that's gonna be like, "Oh, I could do that too." Like, it's
That's
it's
right.
teaching me that I could do that, which feels very different than a friend of mine saying like, "Hey, I'm going to IFS therapy and you should too." Okay, that feels
Exactly.
very different.
Yeah, so that's exactly what happened. So I had a friend who came to me who was worried about her daughter. I said, "Oh, you should consider IFS." I sent her all these links so that she could check it out, do a little bit of research. I don't think she did anything with it. And then she read my book in one sitting and she said, "Oh my God, IFS." And I did all this research and I'm so interested and I'm giving the book to my daughter. And I'm and I'm like, "Yeah, great, awesome." Because you're right. It's a more palatable way to engage with therapy can be scary for people. But healing through story is we've been doing it for centuries, like for forever. That's that's essentially what we've been doing. So I feel like there's something deep within us that really can connect with that.
I love that. What I like what you're also saying too about that our parts tell us stories, and part of their healing is the storytelling that they do and us witnessing that story. Like this, it's not just them telling us the story, but it's us witnessing it too. So, do you want to say a little bit more about that? Because it's sort of like what happens inside happens outside, outside, inside.
All of our parts are storytellers, and I agree that they do need their stories witnessed. That's often, that validation is so critically important. And that's the first step in that deeper self understanding and then opens up the space for healing. So, uh, and, some of our parts have stories that, they don't really want to be believing in. Like, we don't really want to believe in these stories, but we just feel like they've become so much a part of our fabric, so much a part of our inner world. They kind of color the way that we experience life. And they do want to rewrite. They do want to come up with a whole nother creative way of being and bringing their gifts to the world. And we can help them do that. And I think stories really show how that's possible. Um, so yeah, it's actually an exciting space to explore that.
I love that because IFS didn't come up with this idea of like the story I'm telling myself about blah 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 is blah blah blah. But I like using that for like a part of me is telling me the story, whether it's about me or about you or about the world or whatever. It's like a part of me telling me the story. And we know that it's based on it's based on something. It's based on something the part experienced. But that idea it sounds like your book, and I think this is really true with fiction, is that it's so hopeful that it's, like, offering, "Okay, we could write a different story, or could there be a different story that I could be telling?" Or even the idea of why does the part with some curiosity, why does the part need to tell me that story? Or that's maybe a safe story. I don't know. There's a lot here, I think, about the story, about the parts telling us stories.
Yeah, there is. And I think the other thing is that, even when we do some reimagining as part of the healing process, that doesn't mean that we're discounting the story that they have been holding for a very long time and the experience as you say that it's based on. We're not discounting any of that. We're not saying it didn't happen. We're not neglecting that. But what we are saying is that there can be a new story going forward. And wouldn't that be amazing? Wouldn't that be um, yeah, wouldn't that open up more possibilities?
And yeah, I want people just to like, I want to invite people to think about their own stories that they tell. And then what happens? What do they do when they tell themselves that story? Right. So, Jody, if you would have told yourself the story, I can make money, I can be successful as a fiction writer. Like, if that was the part stories you, had in college, you might have had a different experience. And so it's just interesting to think about, all the stories that our parts tell us and how it affects our decisions and our behaviors, and, I think we can be really curious about that.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it affects everything. I would have had I feel like I would have had a very different life. And not to, yeah, uh, not to negate the life I have had because I feel like there's been so much richness in it, even though there was there was times of burnout and there was, all the things. There was a lot going on. But, yeah, I think the stories we tell ourselves, uh, and therefore and then the stories that we read can kinda come together in this beautiful interplay, which can help create new stories.
I love it. Speaking of new stories, you're writing a second book, is that right?
I am. Well, the second book is finished, will be out in 2025, and just this week I've started writing the third book. So they're all in a series in
Okay.
that we are following, different characters from the same friendship group going through their issues. And so in the second book, we are exploring issues around body image and disordered eating. And then in the 3rd book, well, I'm not gonna tell you what the 3rd book's about yet because it's still evolving.
Do you know what cha you don't have to tell us, but do you know what do you have you picked a character from the 1st book that's gonna be in the 3rd book?
Yes, yes, we've got the characters all in place,
Did
and
you know that
it's
when you wrote the 1st book? Were you like, "Okay, the 1st book's gonna be about this person, and then if this goes okay, the 2nd book will be about Bob, and the 3rd book will be about Jill." Like, did you know that writing the
Yeah,
1st
I
one?
get I
Okay.
get breadcrumbs of like, okay, this is the next book. We need to just introduce this character and
Oh, okay.
yeah, so it kind of evolves that way. But yeah,
Okay.
they like I feel like I only receive information when it's time and not before.
I love it. So it's more it's almost a spiritual experience too, where you're open, you're
Yeah,
creative and self energy, and then you get these little breadcrumbs or downloads.
that's right.
I
Yeah.
love that. So does IFS make an appearance in your 2nd book?
Yes, they all go to IFS therapy.
Oh, okay. Okay. So like once the friends go, all the friends go.
Yeah, they all go to the same therapist and, it's all part of their own journey, their own process. So,
Okay.
yeah,
Okay. I love that because then you can see how they each do it differently or how
that's
they
right.
have okay, I love that. That's great. Um and then okay, so there's a the writing part of me wants to ask the writing parts of you, like your manager parts. My manager parts want to ask your manager parts. Like how did you go from maybe this isn't the question. This is what I really want to ask about a writing practice because people ask me this all the time and I don't have a good answer. So tell me about your writing practice. What have you found? What's changed? What's evolved?
I write in the mornings, that seems to be my rhythm. I'll get up, I will do some journaling, and I'll do an energy check-in, I'll have a check-in with my parts, I kinda create the space, clear the space for the writing. And then I connect to the book itself because to me the book feels like it's not me. It has its own essence in the same way that, it's kind of like I kind of see it like a part that has come into my world and that has its own, views on life. And so
Like it has its own life. Like it has its
it has its own
own
life.
life.
Yeah.
Okay. I love that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So in the same way that I connect to my parts, I will connect to the book. And then I will, and then I will listen. I will listen, and but before I get to the start writing the first chapter, there's a process before that which is very IFS aligned, where it's about exploring who this main character is and what they really want out of life, and also what that story is that they're telling themselves, which is going to get in the way of what they really want. And then where did that story first originate? So it's a younger part of them that went through an experience that is still holding on to pain or shame. And then it's about working out, you know, starting with that origin story to where the book starts. What are the other couple of kind of main incidents where that story got pinged or where protectors came up to protect that younger part, and just to get a sense of that story of that wound. And then we're like, okay, so now we're here. This is the start of the story. So then I start writing from there. And it is a process of listening. So yesterday I wrote 2 chapters, and then I'm like, I have no idea what's in the next chapter. And then I woke up this morning, it's like, and the idea came for the next chapter, so which I'll write today. So,
Wow. Wow.
yeah,
Okay.
so it's
That's amazing.
really trusting the
I
process.
was gonna say, like, how do you trust? You're like, oh, that there's gonna be another chapter coming.
Yeah, I have parts that really love the process, and I think they want to trust it, even if they are sometimes, a little bit scared or doubtful. So, but whenever I'm at the beginning of a book, before I've even, written the first page, like I have parts come in that go, we don't know if you can do this again, Jodie. Sure, you've written this other book, but can you write another one? Like, and they kind of like want to hold me back from the process in case I can't do it. But then we kind of, I validate those parts. I totally get it, and they just give me just a little bit of space to begin. And then once we begin, the momentum can can happen.
That's great. This is so I'm excited for you. I'm excited for us. I'm excited to read this book. I haven't read it yet, obviously, so I'm excited to read it, and, just I love this idea of putting IFS in fiction because it's like it reaches a whole other world. Like, it reaches a whole other, dynamic of people. That's not the
It
right word,
does.
but yeah.
I had a 70-year-old man email me and say, "Oh my god, I loved your book. This is about a teenage girl. I love a happy ending." He goes, ever since I had my grandchildren, I feel like I've connected with my inner teen, and I've had mothers and daughters reading it together. I've had, teens then passing it on to their friends. So it's really, yeah, it's powerful. And I actually didn't realize how powerful it can be until I started to hear these stories back about my story.
I love that. One of the things that, I don't wanna forget to ask you about was you did talk about this main character had come to you in, like, other areas of your life, or she kept kind of wouldn't leave you alone. So tell me a little bit about that before we go, because 'cause I'm so curious
Yes.
about it.
So I got the insight to start writing fiction. And then what happened was I had all these planning strategic parts come in and they go, right, we've got the best idea for you. We think you should write about this IFS therapist and she's in this little practice and we can talk about her love life and her friendships and her and we can write a series and then she sees all these different clients and patients and blah. And then I kind of went, oh yeah, that's a great idea. Great idea. And then I sat with it and went, no, that's not that's not the story that wants to be written. And then what happened is I had, a teen part, probably more than one, but one in particular. She forced me to watch this, um, teen rom-com on Netflix, like 20 times, at least 20 times, which is
Like the
like
same one? The
absurd. The
same one?
same movie,
What was it?
right? Um, oh, well, it's silly, but no, it's not silly. She's saying
You
it's
don't have to
good,
say if you don't
Jodie.
want to.
No, no, it's called The Kissing Booth, right? And it's
Oh,
whatever.
okay.
It's
Is this a
a
fun teen?
it's a
Yeah,
fun teen rom-com,
okay.
and she made me watch it lots and lots of times to engage with and reignite that teen energy, like that really palpable sense of excitement and anything's possible and, that energy that we kind of have left back with those years because now we've gotta be sensible and get on with adult life. And she's like, "No, you need to feel this again. It's amazing." And so she made me do that. And then it's like, "No, no, you're writing teen fiction." And I never, ever thought I'd be writing teen fiction, but that's what wanted to happen. So,
Amazing, amazing. I'm so glad you listened. I mean, I think that's part of the work that you've done is so the other thing about storytelling is that we're listening. And so you've been listening to your parts, you've been listening to your system, and so you were able to really listen to what this character wanted to tell you.
yeah, absolutely. And that you're absolutely right because, one part of storytelling is speaking, telling. But another massive part of it is listening, and that, of course, brings the connection, which is we know is another quality of self, and so it's been a really beautiful process.
Well, Jody, this is great. I'm super excited to read your book and share it with the IFS community. I think people are going to really love it. And I'm in a book club. I've been in book clubs for like 20 years, and we have read so many teen books. And one of my book club friends is a middle school teacher, and so she's always like knows what's the latest book. So I'll let her know, and maybe I'll buy it for her for Christmas. That's a good idea, actually. Actually, that's a really good idea. Okay, so my last question for you so where can everybody find you, get your book? Tell everybody kind of where to get in touch with you.
Yeah, so the book is called Never Not Ever, and it's available on my website at jodiebenveniste.com. It's also on all retailers across the world, so online retailers. There's the paperback, there's also an ebook and an audiobook version that my daughter has narrated. Um, she's an actor and voice artist, so it's so exciting. That's
That
just
is
come
so
out.
special. Oh my
Yeah.
goodness.
And,
Oh,
yeah, so you can get it at your favorite retailer, and also I'm online, under Jodie Benveniste Author on Instagram and Facebook. And I also have a free newsletter where I share the creative process and inner world reflections. And I'm just launching also a new paid supporter version where we get once a month we're going to go much deeper, and we're going to also I'm also going to share a creative and sort of inner world process to support everyone as well. And the first one we came into our main character energy. So if you'd like to check that out, that's all the information's on my website as well.
That is super exciting. I love that. I love that. It's like your way of that's evolved so beautifully from like, and it's your way of helping and counseling and supporting people. That's incredible.
Yeah, that's right. I've kind of worked out, and it's taken me a lifetime to that I can help people with that greater self-understanding and emotional healing and support people, not necessarily through um, one-on-one therapy, not through necessarily explicit teaching, although I have done all of that, but through story, through fiction, and through connecting regularly around, yeah, our inner worlds and our creative life.
Yeah, that's beautiful. So, Jody, if you weren't doing what you're doing right now and you had to do something different, what would you do?
So I feel like it's taken me a lifetime to get to fiction writing, so I definitely want to be doing it. But if it were a different lifetime, I've always had this thing about, oh, wouldn't it be awesome to be like a female lead singer in like an alt rock band, like
Yes.
just rocking it out. Maybe I'll be that.
That's a great answer. I love that answer. Well, Jody, thank you so much. I'm excited to read your book, and we will be in touch soon. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Tammy.
Thanks for hanging out with us today. If you enjoyed this episode, I'd love it if you left a rating, a review, a like, comment, share with your family, your friends. That would mean so much to me. My book is available at your favorite independent bookstore or on Amazon. You can visit my website, tammysalinger.com, or you can download a free Get to Know a Should part of you. You can follow me at IFS-Tammy on Instagram and at The One Inside on Facebook and on YouTube. Jeff Schrum co-produces The One Inside, and I am forever grateful for Jeff. Also thankful for Jack Reardon for creating the music, and just thank you for listening. 6 seasons, over 1 million downloads. I cannot tell you how much I appreciate you in this community. I'll see you next time.